Welcome to the Coon Hunting University podcast, where we'll discuss all things coon hounds, from competition hunting to pleasure hunting with family and friends. I'm your host, Alan Bridges, and we'll take an in-depth look at our hounds from the whelping box to the winter circle and all the stops in between. So grab your notebooks and your pencils because class is in session.
Coon Hunting University is brought to you by Conkey's Outdoors, hunting and hound supply store. Find out more at conkeys.outdoors.com. And Superior Hunting Lights. Superior, step up to the max. Use discount code CHU podcast at checkout and receive 5% off on nighthunters.com. If you're in the market for a new dog box, go over and check out GNR Cedar Dog Boxes on Facebook, or go give Gavin a call at 615-962-5266.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back again with special guest Paul Glover from, where you from, Paul?
I'm from La Crosse, Indiana.
La Crosse, Indiana. That's in the northwest part of the state, right?
Yeah, it's about 2 hours north of Indianapolis.
I got you. So, Paul, tell us about how you got started with coon hunting, or when you got started coon hunting, and tell us about your line of dogs. Just tell us your story, and, don't leave anything out.
All righty, I'll try to fit it in a short little amount of time we got here.
Well, take your time.
I've pretty well hunted since I was, I'd say, 5 years old, and my dad was always a pleasure hunter, and he'd pack me around here and there, and I remember pretty young in age, I'd ask Dad to take me hunting during the week, and he wouldn't let me go because of school and everything, and I'd find myself staying up to 2 or 3 in the morning waiting till Dad pulled in the driveway to see how many coons he had killed. And it's just kind of always been a passion of mine, and I know some kids start out pretty young and they might grow out of it and stuff, but it's been something that I see myself dying doing.
How old were you when you were waiting on your dad till 2 or 3 in the morning?
Oh, I was, 3, 4, 5, 6, real young,
When did he start letting you go on a regular basis?
I'd say probably 9, 10 years old. We'd hunt pretty steady. I was about 12. We had a couple of spots right here around the house. Dad had a couple pair of black dogs back then, and he let me take the truck on down the road at 12, 13 years old, and I'd hunt them 2 black dogs together, and found myself with handling 2 dogs and a coon and a gun most of the time. We hunted them till I'd say I was probably late teens when they both finally grew old in age, and I had that black dog. Her name was Dixie. She probably had a shot of cur in her. The way my dad talked, he had that dog Ace. I think they were pretty well kin to each other, cousins or something. But treat a lot of coon with them black dogs, and that's what I started out with originally.
Well, how long have you been hunting, Paul?
I've been hunting. I'm 30. I'll be 33 in October, so I'd say 20 years plus.
Got you.
Close to it. When I was 16 years old, I hunted just about every night. We actually moved to Kentucky, eastern Kentucky, when I was, I think, early teens, 14, 15, somewhere in there. And when I got my license, I met a boy from school that coon hunted. His name was Lincoln Brown, and we'd hunt at least 5, 6 nights a week, and I never did get in trouble back then for getting home too late, but we'd stay out on the weekends till daylight most of the time, especially during when we was off school through summer and stuff. We pretty well hunted 7 nights a week, and we'd stay out all night long. So it's just something I guess it goes back to my roots. That black and tan was actually the first dog I had that my dad let me train her myself. He coached me along the way, but I spent many nights with her. Learned a lot from her, really, being my first dog and stuff. That's the beginning of my story.
Well, that takes us through what, your teenage years?
Yeah, I'd say probably to my teens until I got into the English dogs, which I think I got into them. What happened was that black and tan, I let a guy use her for a pup trainer. And that's when I was living in Kentucky, and she ended up dying on me. I think she was probably 12, and Dad had a friend named John Noble. He had this old female named Wendy. He called me one day and he said, I know you lost your dog. He said, I got an older female over here. He said, I'd like to give her to you. So I went and picked her up. I think she was probably 6. She was a night champion dog, and Buck Creek's Wild Wendy was her name. Her sire and dam were just pleasure hunt, just behind the barn dogs, and the sire was directly off of Woodstock Redman. No, he was directly off St. Nick, and the mother was directly off of Redman.
So the Wendy female's kind of what hooked you on English dogs.
Yeah, that's everything I got today goes right back to her. I'd say her biggest hole was she probably had too much nose and maybe not enough brains to move one. That's where my English dog started from was her. And I was living in Kentucky at the time, and I think I hunted her. I bet she was 11 years old. She was just a dog you cut loose, and I know a couple guys that know about her. You cut her loose, you might as well get your Nikes on and plan to go along for the ride, because she wasn't coming back till she was treed somewhere.
If you wear Nikes down here, you're going to be cut all to pieces.
About needing to climb them Appalachians.
Oh, I'm south of the mountains.
But yeah, she was that's back before Garmin's were a thing, and you cut her loose, it's hard telling where he's gonna pick her up. I actually lost her twice, and I found her the next day both times treed. And I know the one time was about noon, and she was laying under the tree, just barely treed, but she stayed. That's a pretty good trait to have, a dog. You see some talk about my dog treed for an hour or two, and this little thing here, she treated the next day till he got there.
That's right. That's a stay put tree dog.
Yes. Dead loner. She was, I don't think I ever pulled her off a tree with another dog. And, probably her biggest hole was, she would straddle some bad tracks, but she'd always finish them. She had heart in her that I've been hard to find in many dogs nowadays. I had somebody ask a question one time if the old school dogs could compete with the new age dogs. If you actually read through the comments and stuff, you find out that somebody's measuring stick was from 20 years or older. That's right. And so do I think they could? Absolutely. I think dogs back then were, they had their weak points, but they had their strong points, and you treat a lot of coon with them. And they were honest old dogs. I think we bred Wendy. This is way before I ever even got into competition hunting. I didn't know anything about it. We heard about a dog. I lived in Moorhead, Kentucky at the time. My dad called John Noble. He said, "Hey."
And what year was this roughly?
This was probably 2007, I'd say. So it's been a while. Mm-hmm. My dad called John. He said, I don't know. We never had the magazines. We didn't keep up with these stud dogs and stuff, And John said, well, he said, there's a dog over there, not too far from where we're at. And he said, give him a call. And it was Stanley Nichols. And he had Main Street Max. We didn't know nothing about the dog, but we just knew that she was in heat and we wanted to breed her. And, a lot of people were talking about Max at the time. We took her over there to Stanley's and we got her bred. And I think she was bred once before to Charlie 7. And I think she only had, one pup live. She wasn't a good mother. She never had real big litters. And out of Max, we had 4 pups. I think she might have had a couple more, but I think she laid on them or something. But at that time, I was 18 years old, and I had gotten in a little bit of trouble. When I finally got home, she had her pups, and they were a month old. I told Dad, I said, I'm going to keep that male right there, and I'll keep this female here. I'll keep 2 of them just in case one don't pan out. That's where I got you've probably heard me post on them, the Main Street Rambling Rambo dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I started the female along with him, and I ended up selling her. She was a pretty fair little dog too. But that's where I got the old Rambo dog, and he's my pride and joy, and he's my measuring stick from what he turned out to be. But Wendy ended up passing away. I think he was probably 6 months old. I was just getting ready to really start hunting him, and she got treed one night down in Montgomery County, Kentucky, and we just had our quick track at the time, and she'd been treed for a while. We was trying to drive around. She was at the head of this big holler somewhere and trying to find a closer way to her. And as many nights as I spent with this dog, I knew for a fact that she had never left a tree. And she quit treeing on me, and we drove around, and I bet I drove around for 2 weeks looking for this dog, and she was probably 12 years old at the time. I don't know if somebody went in there and took her, or she just had a heart attack and died under a coon. I couldn't tell you. I never did find her.
That's tough.
But it was, I was probably 18 years old at the time. And I was actually hunting with a guy that handled dogs for Stanley at that time. I forget what his last name was, McCoy. I forget what his first name was. And I didn't know nothing. I went to Carter County Club down there, and truth be told, I'm going to tell the truth on everything. I was a young teenager, and she was going on past. The dogs were treated slick, and she was going on past, and they told me to handle my dog. So I handled her, and she was still running, and they ended up flipping a coin and giving the coin flipper which I wasn't in on that. I think it was between the judge and the guide, and they put them some plus points and got them a win. That was a little UKC hunt. I didn't know no better, as time goes on, I started hunting Rambo, and he was 6-7 months old, and a lot of people call me crazy by the way I start dogs, but it's just the way I've, this dog right here is probably what taught me everything that I know about coon hunting. And I've asked a lot of old timers things along the way, on how to correct this or that, and 6-7 months old, you cut Rambo loose, and from the first night I ever hunted him, I never could. You had to go catch him. He wasn't something that ever rubbed your ankles, and this was down here in the mountains. So I spent a lot of time trying to find him. Because he was more of a track minded. He started running track probably 8 months old. He run tracks all night long. He never would look up. I think I showed him one cage coon, and he never would do nothing with it, and anymore a lot of people's, I've gotten a lot of pups from people that thinks their dog's not interested in a coon because they won't bark at one. You see a lot of them come up for sale like that. Well, I'll take one. I got an old dog, best dog I ever cut loose. Never would have admired one,
Mm-hmm.
So I got him, and he started running tracks, and I actually took a couple cage coon down there. You have to, you're not going to come across no hot tracks on top of you. It's probably the same way as it is where you're at.
It's been tough lately.
Yeah. You got them sows laid up. We got kittens right now in dens. People's been posting videos of kittens. I know them sows probably ain't moving too far right now anyway.
Well, I tell you, the main place that I have to hunt right now, I think I've
Conkey's Outdoors knows that keeping up with the latest in hunting technology can be expensive. That's why they are proud to offer amazing financing options, from 30 days same as cash to 0% interest for 6, 9, 12, and even 18 months, depending on your credit score and the amount you spend. If you've been eyeballing that new thermal or want to upgrade to the latest in tracking system technology, go find out more on the web at conkeys.outdoors.com, or if you're in the Hastings, Florida area, stop by and visit. They'd love to have you. Conkey's Outdoors, houndsman helping houndsman.
Treed one and caught one in the river in the last 2 months on that place. And
Wow.
I've been fooling with a few young dogs, and I got a new little project that's going on, and she's doing okay. She's never been hunted much in her entire life, but man, she needs some correction. She'll tree coons, but she'll tree anything that climbs or goes in a hole.
Them's the hard ones to break too.
Well, she's gamey, I'll say that.
Yeah, that's a good start though. I'd rather have something gamey than not gamey. Trash never did bother me none. The old dog there, and hey, he was running tracks and everything. Well, I'd take some cage coon out to him, and I wouldn't show him the coon. I'd turn him loose, and I'd let him run a little while, I started letting him get on some hotter tracks. And I think he was, back then, I ended up quitting high school and stuff, and I was traveling up north here with Dad. We was up here working throughout the week. I'd bring him with me. I finally took him out one night. Dad said, let's go cut that dog loose by himself. And I said, I don't know. He said, let's just go see what he'll do. We'll go to this little patch woods over here. And that was the night, I think he was just right at a year old, about the age now where people call him. And he went in there and run a track, felled trees, and he was every breath. He was 120 plus bark tree dog. I tied him up to that tree, and I walked back to the truck. I let him tree probably 20 minutes. I rolled that coon out to him, and after that, he just started treeing coon every drop. It's just like once he flipped, he just started treeing coons, and he when he was a 1-year-old, he went through a ground pound stage, which it didn't bother me none. And Dad makes fun of me all the time. He said, he said, nowadays, I doubt you would have kept that dog. I said, well, that dog right there showed me, what a dog like that can turn into. And, during the winter months, frost was thick and stuff, he would drive you nuts as a 1-year-old. But, he reminded me a lot of his mother. Mm-hmm. He'd start something, he'd always finish it. And he was deadly accurate. When he didn't like the tree just to hear him. He was a pretty tree dog. He was probably the best tree dog I've unsnapped, but he didn't tree just to hear himself. He liked to be sure that the coon was there. And I'd say by 2, he finally learned how to really drift out a track. Mm-hmm. But he was my first dog that I actually started competition hunting with, and I actually made a post on the UKC forums. And I'm a young teenager. I see a lot of youth, asking questions. It's better just to be kind to them and answer them. I made a post on the UKC board, and I told him about my dog and stuff, and he was a year and a half old, I'd say. I had a couple comments. Well, if you got to ask if your dog's ready for the hunt, maybe you shouldn't even bother even going to town and taking them.
Well, those kind of folks wear me out.
Yeah. So, I didn't know nothing. I was always a pleasure hunter. So I honestly never went to a hunt. I said, well, maybe, this is words of wisdom here. Maybe I don't know if he's ready. I think I was around 20 years old that I ended up moving back up here where I'm at now, and that's where I've been ever since. He turned about 3 years old, and I was like, I'm gonna see what this dog's made of. I truly didn't know what I had, and I learned a lot of. I think back then them hunts were $20. I learned a lot of $20 lessons, but I never did quit. And I had a guy tell me one night this, back then, you went to the UKC hunts, you had more of, a lot of dogs were more pack style back then. That was the big thing, highest score wins when you come back to the club. It ain't like it is now. But back then I had an old timer tell me, he said, young man, he said, your dog, he said, he'll never make it as a competition dog. And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, for one, your dog's by himself too much. He said, you'll never score high enough to ever do good. And I said, well, he might be alone all the time, but he's got a coon. That's what wins hunts, ain't it? I never did score real high with him, 675, somewhere in there, 600s. I'd score about 3 coon in a hunt because he was a dog that was usually deep and lonely. Back then, that wasn't the popular thing. That's the style of dog he was, and I think I made him a night champion, and I actually quit taking him to the hunts for a while. He got run off a couple trees, and my mind said, I'm not going to ruin my dog, for these hunts. These hunts didn't mean nothing to me. So I think I started him at 3 years old in the hunts. I made him a night champion. I quit going for a while. I just went back to pleasure hunting. But I didn't hunt him in another hunt for, I think it was 3 years. He was probably 6 years old when I finished him out. I didn't know anything about stud dogs. I never kept up with none of this. Was my early 20s, 21, 22, I had Facebook back then. I made me a little stud ad and, trying to do like everybody else does, and old night champion, Main Street Rambling Rambo. And I'd post quite a bit on the English page and stuff. And I offered to show the dog, I told him what he was. And we're actually pretty good friends now. I'll mention his name. He probably remembers this. Brian Bubba Smith. I think a lot of people know him. He's handled some dogs through the years. He messaged me. He said, I'm not trying to knock your dog or anything. He said, but your dog's just a night champion. He hasn't proved himself in any hunts of any sort. He hasn't done this and that. And he said, I'm not saying he's not a nice dog. He said, but that's what people was looking for to breed to. So I said, well, I'll take that in consideration. I said, just keep watching. And at this time, I had a dog by the name of Main Street Hooker. I called Stanley Nichols, and I said, Stanley, I really like my dog off of Max. I said, you don't have anything else? He said, well, I've got a little female here. He said she got started, and she's kind of been put on the back burner. I think she was close to 2 years old, and he gave me a price, $1,500 for started young dog. He said, I'll let you take her up there. He met us down there in Louisville, me and Dad, and we brought her up north here. And I think the first 3 nights, this thing didn't do nothing. And I think she even chewed on a deer carcass. I think she caught a possum on the ground. She didn't treat coon for 3 nights. And we turned her loose in a little patch. And she ended up laying the coon up first crotch. And it was probably 1 or 2 in the morning. This thing was sound asleep. I looked at Dad. I said, let's buy her. He kind of looked at me. He said, well, you going to hunt her? I said, absolutely. She went hunting, by herself. That's my biggest thing. If something will go hunting, I can usually do something with it. And she showed me that she could tree a coon. I think she was probably 18, 19 months old. At this time, I'd hunt Rambo a little bit. I hunted her. I bet I hunted her 6 nights a week steady. She wouldn't go over 300 yards by herself. She'd come back in. She'd try to check in on me. I'd pull out the little switch. I'd send her back in until she finally got treed. I'd done that for a little while. She finally figured it out. She'd go in there and she'd tree coons. And so I started taking her to the hunts. And she was about stone cold silent. She's actually a full litter mate to the Main Street Mac dog that Mark Gittner has. I granded her out, I think, the first year that I put her in them hunts. Actually, the night I granded her out, I had a guy try to scratch me for not running track, and one of my buddies was with me. He said, "You see, you ain't scratching that dog." He said, "She's treated Coon around our dogs all night long." He said, "That dog deserves the win tonight." And she ended up making grand that night. And I think I took her to one hunt, and it was autumn oaks. The judge pulled a fast one on me, and I actually got scratched. And if I would have had that Coon scored, I would have gotten a grand 16 with her. But at the end of the hunt, I drew a pretty nice red bone that night. Kentucky Moonlight Woody was his name, and old man from Kentucky owned him, and I helped him find his coons, like anybody should. I know a lot of guys won't do that in them big hunts, but I want the better dog to win. And I think he scored on 3 or 4 coons, and me and him was pretty close. I was taking low end strike all night, and Hooker was off to her self split. I treat her in first, and the judge said, "Go ahead and handle your dog. We'll go handle these." And I heard the 3 dogs off to the side, and they come back to my tree, and I learned a hard lesson this night. I said, "I'll take my first 2." She was on a big, giant oak tree, and I was able to shine all the way around it. I just picked the prettiest spot I could find, hit that squaller with my red light. Coon looked at me. The judge said, "You're scratched." He said, "I never did handle my dog." And the judge was in 300 something in the hole. It's just a hunt you don't forget,
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Okay." The coon was sitting right there, and I leashed up my dog. I went back to the truck. I think I hunted her at Southern English Days one year. I withdrew because she got way out of pocket on me, and they were hunting feeder buckets. They kept treeing off them feeders, and she was way opposite direction. I never even could hear her.
Well, I tell you, I would have won a lot more hunts if I'd have kept my light turned off.
Yeah, I learned that after that hunt right there. I always ask the judge, even if I know better. I said, "Can I squall?" Which now you can,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Well,
it ain't like it was.
One thing that's always bothered me is when people are standing around at the tree and they're on the cast and they refuse to put their light up in a tree, and I always said to myself, if I get beat because I helped somebody find their coon, I'm good with that. and I've been beat several times because I found the dog's coon. The dog deserved it,
Oh yeah.
And that's what you're supposed to do. And
right.
Some people want to win more than they want to
be a good sport.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm the one that's got to look at myself in the mirror every morning. So I'm good with getting beat if I find somebody else's coon there at the end or whatever. But I know what you're saying. I actually have scratched someone for squalling at a tree when they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
And that was just because the rules said so. And he was mainly a PKC hunter, and he didn't realize it. And it's, as a hunting judge, it's not my responsibility to make sure everybody else knows the rules.
Right.
So when he did it, I said, "Man, you're scratched. I'm sorry. I hate it." But and to his credit, he was a good sport about it. He says, "I didn't know." Like, "Sorry, man, I'll show it to you on the car." And he's like, No, I believe you. But yeah, I mean, this sportsmanship's a big deal, and sometimes in these hunts you're the windshield, and sometimes you're the bug. So,
oh yeah. But yes, she ended up passing away on me at 5 years old. She had the vet said she had Ehrlichia. I took her in. She was acting awful strange, and put her on that doxycycline. And 4 days after her prescription was up, she was laying in the doghouse dead.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if that's what killed her or not, but that's where my battle with tick fighting it all began right there. And it's a never ending battle with them things.
Oh yeah, that's a fact. It seems like there's something new that pops up every year or two with dogs and ticks.
I've tried everything, and the vet will always say, 99% of the time an outside dog's going to have Lyme's. It always shows exposed. Or I've done the vaccines, the boosters, everything. I still do it just in case, it does work. But I've noticed it affects it affects every dog differently.
You bet.
And no doubt my Rambo dog, I guarantee you he had it. I didn't. Young, dumb teenager, I didn't take that dog to the vet not one time. I guarantee he had something wrong with him. Back to that Rambo dog for a minute. I remember what that Brian had said to me. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and finish. I finished her out the grand, and I got a little bit better with the rules and kind of knew the little tricks. Some good little handler tricks people try to pull on you. I was always ahead of that game. I just went in there and just called my dog. He was always by himself. Most of the time then you had more of the pack style dogs. Most of the time there was 2 or 3 dogs on the same tree. I'd wait till they go head and tree unless I just ambushed one. They'd handle their dogs, and I'd say, you hear me through there? I'd say, tree Rambo, and that's back when leash lock. I'd leash lock him every time, and I ended up granting him, I think, in the first 5 or 6 hunts for grand I put him in. I had him laid up for a while. I had a young dog by the name of Main Street Dino off of Main Street Dino, and Seth Ish's Red Ruby Hard Time Susie dog. I was pushing him awful hard, and this was back in 2014. I think he was probably right around a year old. I said, I'm gonna go over here to Blue Tick Days, National Blue Tick Days, a Purina hunt. I think I won my cast. Friday night I didn't place. Saturday night I won my cast with, I think, 612 and a half or whatever that split is. It was kind of a fun hunt. We got stopped by a game warden on one drop, and the judge or nobody never called timeout. I heard Rambo load up, throw his locate, and I treat him. They kind of just looked at me. I say, ain't none of you boys called timeout. All them guys started treeing their dogs after that. Game warden standing right there. We ended up going, scoring them. They had a coon. I think I was down.
Are you in the market for a new dog box and just don't know which one to get? That's where I encourage you to go check out GNR Cedar Dog Boxes, especially if you're wanting something different. GNR Cedar Dog Box was established in 2016 when 2 avid hunters wanted a dog box that was affordable and great looking at that. They provide a high-quality, handmade, lightweight box to the customers. They take pride in the fact that their boxes are fully cedar, which will last a lifetime in all types of weather conditions. Cedar also ensures your hounds stay a little warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. You can find out more about GNR Cedar Dog Boxes on Facebook. Find them at GNR Cedar Dog Boxes, or give them a call at 615-962-5266. They are located in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, USA.
Down by 50 points. He was usually a third strike dog on average. I seen this little tiny patch. I had a friend with me. I said, they're gonna try to drive. The guy's gonna try to drive home right here. There was maybe 10 minutes left in the hunt. Turned to loose in this little patch, and 3 blue dogs went in there and got in a big hole in the ground, and I didn't know where my dog was. I didn't have a clue where he was. They finally got them dogs rounded up, and I could just barely hear them. I told that judge, I said, you hear me? He said, yeah. I said, striking tree Rambo way through there. He said, how far is he? I said, well, if you want to walk it, I said, he's .82. He blew through that patch, went across the field, across the next road, and he was treating a little slough there, and he had a coon up a bush. I ended up winning first place grand night that night. That it might have not meant much to a lot of people, but it meant something to me back then. He'd been laid up for, I don't think I hunted him for 6 months. And them boys laughed at me, and I pulled in. I said, this old dog ain't been pulled out of the kennel in 6 months, and I'm just gonna whip him out and go tree some coons. And ended up winning that night with him. But I think I hunted him in Oaks when he was probably 14 months old. He blew out of I had a bad register cast. I don't know how many of those you've been on them big hunts, but they're usually a freak show.
About every cast. Them
dogs ran that same little woods and cornfield for the whole hunt. Rambo treated Coon right off the bat. We recut him, and he left the country.
Yeah, going to those big hunts, everything's got to, you got to catch every break imaginable. You got to get there on time and safe. You got to get confirmed. You draw out with the folks that you're going to hunt with, and you have to have a decent guide. For me, going to those big hunts, they don't know who I am, and I never carry the card in those things. So you got to hope you get a guy that knows the rules and knows how to apply them, and then you hope your chemistry on the cast with the handlers there is good, and then you got to have some luck and you got to catch some breaks. I'm usually get there safe and get confirmed on time. The rest is a toss up. I tell my buddies I never have any luck at those big hunts. That's why I don't go anymore.
It costs a lot of money to go to as well. That's one department I've always lacked in, was being able to afford to campaign, like some of these guys.
It's expensive for sure.
Oh yeah, I was single then, but I wasn't good with money. Didn't know how to manage. I spent every nickel I had on young dogs, or it was all on coon hunt most of the time. And I actually did the math one time. I just curious on what it cost to hunt a dog for a year. And if you hunt one right, if you hunt one hard and you lay out in the woods with it, it's around $5,000 easy. So it's definitely not cheap, and that's $5,000 a year out of your yearly income. I'm pushing a dog.
And that's just hunting them. That's not counting your entry fees.
Oh, that's just taking them to the woods. That's just the easy part. I don't think PKC was too heavy up here at that time when I had him. Or if I had him today, I wish I did. That's all I would hunt that dog in was PKC, because he was getting through there. He was 100% dead loner, and this is all natural. He had a coon when he parked. He was. A lot of people can argue with percentages on dogs, and well, if you got 70% accurate, that's actually a pretty fair dog if you actually do the math on it. 9 out of 10 times I was walking to a coon to this dog. He was just a dog you cut loose. When he got treed, you might as well just start loading it. He was confident to see one.
That's right.
He's the only one I like that.
I've had one or two that it was a surprise when you didn't see the coon.
Yeah, they do exist, and a lot of people just haven't had the privilege. I've been blessed to at least own one like that in my life. He's my measuring stick, but he's, them two dogs right there is really when I started competition hunt. I just hunted UKC and there wasn't just PKC hunts around really they didn't have these legacies, pro classics, all that. They had the pro hunts, which I couldn't afford to go to anyway. But them's two dogs right there that, I would hunt against about anything, and I'd give them a good run. I'd get beat, but I'd always be in the fight.
You bet. So today, do you mainly hunt PKC, or do you hunt UKC, or do you still hunt both?
I've been hunting, this last dog I had, I got his 5 cast wins for that Tournament of Champions. And then the next year I just went ahead and finished him the Grand. But as far as, traveling around the Winter Classic, all this stuff, I'm not gonna spend the money to go to them and not really get nothing in return. It's bragging rights don't mean nothing to me. I just enjoy my own line of dogs, and they suit me. They please me. I've tried for years to try to, I don't breed much, maybe once or twice a year or something, but I try my hardest to try to get them in good hands. But it's a political circle anymore unless you're this, you like to brag. I guess you can do good, but I'm not cut out like that.
Me either. My grandma told me, she said, son, if you don't toot your horn, nobody's going to do it for you. So I said, well, I guess nobody will know much about me because I can't make myself do it a lot.
I've got some semen on him, so I'll be as far as my own breeding, I have never bred a female that did not suit me in the woods. I bred him to a female from Alabama. And I told the guy, I said, I'll meet you down in Lexington. I said, but I'm just going to let you know that I am going to hunt her before I breed her. She wasn't in heat yet. And I said, if she's just something I don't feel like I'm confident enough to breed, if she doesn't show me much, I said, I'm not going to spend the money on the semen to breed her. Rambo was alive at the time, but he had a heat stroke when he was 4 or 5, and I never could get him bred live.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed like he got too hot, and I couldn't ever get nothing bred live. So I had to use semen on him. And he said, well, I totally understand. I said, I'm just not going to breed a brood dog. If I'm going to spend money, my time, it means something to me. Everybody's different. But my time that I spend in the woods with pups, it means something to me. And if I'm going to breed a female to one of my males, I want the odds to be better as far as a coon dog to coon dog. She wasn't ever competition hunted or nothing. Just a pleasure dog. And I treat some coons with her. I let the guy know. I said, hey, she showed me enough. She was independent enough. Good tree dog. I went ahead and bred her. He called me after them pups were born. He said, you'll never believe how many she's had. She had 17 pups.
Holy smokes.
That's one of the biggest litters I've heard of.
It's the biggest litter I've ever heard of. I've been breeding dogs for 20 years.
17 pups. He did lose half the litter, which that's.
He still had a lot of puppies.
Yeah, she had I think 9 of them. But I called the guy and I said, you know what? I said, I think I end up meeting him again down in Lexington, and right around the time them pups would be weaned, I said, if you want to, just meet me down at the Winter Classic. I'll just take a pair of pups. I took 2. And I named one of them Rampage at the time was his name. I ended up keeping him, and he was my ramrod dog I had. You've seen me probably post on him.
Mm-hmm.
He was colored up. He looked just like him. And he ended up, it was the first time that I actually started giving pups any puppy, like straight puppy chow. Everybody talks, well, they grow so much better and everything else. And I posted a picture of him, and a guy told me, he said, looks like that pup's starting to get rickets. I said, well, I never had rickets before, never had any clue about it. I gave him the calcium pills and all this stuff, and my dad finally, he said, I'm going to tell you an old Indian trick, straighten that dog right out. He said, forget all that other stuff. They go get you some organic bone meal. He said, put that in that dog's feed. And it's for plants.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in that dog's feed, and it wasn't a week later, it straightened him out. But I think where he had gotten, it had gone so long, because I did the calcium stuff for probably a month, and he just never would straighten out until I did that bone meal. And this little thing right here, he reminded me a lot of his daddy. You cut him loose. It wasn't nothing for him. 6, 7 months old, he'd go a mile right by himself. And after one drop, I'd go get that pup, and he'd start limping. The next day, his one paw right there would be swelled up, looked like he had a baseball in it. So I ended up giving him to a young boy. He was pretty well crippled. I said, buddy, for a first dog, he'll run tree coon. I said, but he's only good for a drop or 2. I don't know if it's where he hunted so hard. He just got lame on me,
Mm-hmm.
He ended up keeping him for quite a while. I ended up getting that litter mate that I had back. I think I was partners with him from a boy from Illinois. He ended up getting out of coon hunting, moving to Tennessee, and I got him back, and I ended up keeping him for a while. His name was Full Throttle Rampage was his name. He placed at English Days as a 2-year-old. third place registered, and that dog ended up getting limes and Ehrlichia both. He'd get treated. I don't care if it was 30 degrees, 20 degrees. It could be cold. He started chewing real bad, and I never could. He was a night champion. Never could finish him out. Two would always catch him. So I sold him to a pleasure hunter. He just got too hot. But now, I don't know. People say you can give a dog that doxycycline for a month and it'll put it back in dormant, and they're good for a while till they flare up again.
Yeah, if you catch it early enough, you can put a dent in it, but a lot of times we don't catch it until it's too late.
Yeah. So that's what happened to him, and he was a real nice dog. That female from Alabama. A lot of people have gotten a hold of me as far as starting pups.
So, how did you get into the starting puppy game?
Well, it all went back to the black dog. I had fun with her, and then Rambo, starting him from scratch. Started his litter mate from scratch. I had that hooker dog. She was barely started. She'd run a tree of a hot, easy Coon most of the time. He bred her once. I bred her 3 times, never could get pups. I ended up getting 1 pup out of her. I actually bred her back to Rambo. Half brother, half sister. That pup ended up getting run over at 7 months old. I've just always, for whatever reason, I've always just bought puppies, off weaning. I just enjoy watching them grow. I enjoy fooling with them out here in the yard. When they're young, I don't just throw them out in the kennel and wait till they're a year old and try to make a coon dog out of them. I do a lot of fun. The 5, 6, 7 months old, I'll start fooling with them as far as handling some.
Mm-hmm.
Just the basics.
I love doing that, but I got burnt out on it. I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and well, probably not quite that long. Probably about 4 years ago, and then I'd fooled with a couple of puppies since and sold them, and I've got one now that I've got pretty high hopes for. I'm pretty excited about. So,
yeah, I like watching them flip.
Yeah, it's time for me to start another one, but and it was my favorite thing to do. I like to, of course, I'm not a guy that goes out and buys a lot of dogs. I pretty much raise what I hunt, and I've bought a few. I bought my foundation, but anymore, the ones that I'm hunting now, if I go to a hunt, I've raised it, or I own the daddy or the mother.
To me, it's that much more rewarding when you raise something from a puppy and they grow into a mature coon dog. And I'm not one that's able to afford to travel these roads all the time myself out of my own pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Can't put my own stuff heavy. I go to what I'm able to go to. There's times when I can't even afford to go to a little $30 hunt,
Mm-hmm.
I got a family now and stuff, but so puppies, they've just always been my thing. If I can try to get them in somebody's hands, that's able to do that, I'll do that. The Oakwoods wild crow dog, I actually called Asa, and I was real, I've had people ask me about the dog. I bought him. I didn't raise him from a pup. I got him at 18 months old, and he needed quite a bit of work, but, we hunted. This is before I was ever dating my wife or anything. 6, 7 nights a week. I'd hunt late, go to work tired. That dog had something. I called Asa. I said, Asa, I've got something here. And I said, I'm not able to do any justice with him. Truth be told, he's not my cup of tea. I said, but I got him ready. Asa's went on to win a lot with that dog.
He's been pretty successful with him.
He's got a couple quarts to him, but you know what? He's done some winning. He's first strike dog, and he is fast. That sucker there, he's got coon on his mind. He is quick. Sometimes a little too quick, but he's definitely And I think Asa, they say he loves him as much as that Ruby dog he had.
Mm-hmm.
I tried a couple others off Jack and stuff, but I never did have much success out of them as far as what I like in a dog. Not knocking the Jack dogs or nothing, but they just weren't something that suits me.
That's
and,
right.
Everybody's got a flavor.
That's right. We're all different, and that's what makes it interesting.
If I'm a diehard English guy, I'll just tell it like it is. If the jealousy and the politics and all this stuff guys would try to compliment traits that they have or want, not because of what they're seeing. If you get on Facebook and you blow something up good enough, you're going to have people flocking to you. There's I know a lot of good houndsmen out there, a lot of guys out there that have done their own thing for years, like I have. They just aren't getting acknowledged like I think they ought to, just because of the.
Hey, y'all. Tyler here from Coon University. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about our great sponsor, Extreme Dog Fuel. I personally swapped to Extreme Dog Fuel ago. Man, I've been blown away by the results. I'm going to talk to you about some of the benefits of the 30-20 real quick. It's an all-life stage formula, high percentage of available calories for canine athletes, high levels of vitamins and minerals, offer quicker recovery and healing, high-quality source of carbohydrates, maintain body condition during peak work periods, extremely palatable, and is loaded with probiotics. Extreme Dog Fuel has actually been told the minerals and the quality of the products that they put in their food is actually overkill, but they don't believe it is. Extreme Dog Fuel has not experienced a price increase since 2017. I believe that speaks a lot about them. It is an outstanding dog food, and I encourage everybody to check it out. Go to extremedogfuel.com and find a retailer near you today.
The circle that's out there.
Well, that goes back to what my grandma said. If you don't toot
Yep.
your own horn, nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
But yes, so you're a handler for some folks. Those guys, they are mainly getting you to take them to PKC hunts, or they're getting you to, title their dog up in UKC, or how's that work?
Yeah, I've handled, I handled for some guys through the years, just here and there, when I didn't have a young dog or something ready for the hunts. Johnny Watkins, he called me over the fall. I get laid off in November.
Yeah, it gets too cold up there for your line of work, doesn't it? Well, tell the listeners what you do for a living.
Yeah, I'm an asphalt, and I pave roads. So once it gets too cold, we're shut off till spring. I usually start back in April. So I got 4 hard months there that I can run the hunts pretty steady for somebody, But Johnny Watkins called me, and he knew I had just sold the Ramrod dog I had. I sold him for some pretty good money, trying to get him. He was worthy to be taken to town, more than I could ever do, and I just didn't want to see another good one sitting, So Johnny called me, and he said, would you be interested in hunting a dog for me? I said, well, what do you got? He had two Walker females over there, and I went over to his house, and he mentioned the Fire female he had. She's a Grand Night, and then this other one, she's just a night champion dog. And he said, you might like this Ruby dog more. He said, I don't know. He said, load Fire up, see if you like her, take her on a hunter. So I threw her in the dog box, and he stood there by the truck, and he started thinking. He said, nah, he said, pull her out and load up Ruby. Right? He said, she's pretty well stone cold silent. He said, she's usually lone, and she's more of a coon dog. I said, well, that sounds about more like what I'm looking for, So I started hunting her some and ran her some PKC for him, and he was wanting to maybe run for the state race, and we was doing, I think I only lost 2 casts with her. Johnny ended up getting a truck ticket to the pro sport. We went out to Oklahoma. I started watching the weather, and I called Johnny. I said, looking awful nasty out there. I think it was a half-inch of ice, and my cousin went with me. We ended up having to pull over in Missouri, getting a motel for the night. I called a fellow English man, Brandon Gaines. I said, hey, I know the weather's nasty. I said, but I'm down here a day early. You care to cut me loose at least once? I just want to see if these coon are going to move at all. I just want to see how she'll operate in Oklahoma too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We cut loose, and we didn't hear her for a while. She went a half mile one way, half mile the other way, and she ended up a half mile back behind us. She ended up getting treed. She ended up having a coon in that tree, and we ended up getting in we won our cast first night. We got in the top 16 down there, and that was kind of one of them iffy casts that makes you scratch your head, like, why am I doing this? You know, got a couple guys going back and forth all night. You know, I treat her. I started looking at my Garmin. I said, there ain't no way I'm going to hear this dog, because I hunted her just about every night when I had her over here. So there ain't no way I'm going to hear this dog. And she was 1.2. Them guys we was listening, had the 6 running on every dog. And finally them judged, well, let's go back this way. And I finally said, whoa. I heard her locate. I said, can you hear me? Judge said, yeah. I said, tree Ruby. This other guy, you know, all the way to the tree was trying to tell the judge I treat his dog and everything. And I finally just told him, I said, buddy, I said, if that's your dog in there, I said, won't you just do what I did and tree your dog? I said, I'll take my minus if mine's not there. I said, that's Ruby. Sure enough, that's what happened. And his dog was in a hole about 700 yards closer than what she was. And she had a coon, got in the top 16, and we drew out Dalton Cummins with the shack dog and a young dog off of him, and I forget what the other dog was, but I had to cast one for I think last 20 minutes of the hunt. She just started to fall apart on me. She kind of quit hunting on me, and I finally just withdrew after they put the 15 on me twice. I called Johnny, and I think he was a little upset, you know, but next morning she was in heat. She was that close to getting in the final 4, and I'm just glad she acted good. Well, it was bad timing regardless, but most of them act goofy a week or two before they come in, you know.
I know it. I prefer to hunt females, and I got a kennel full of them, and yeah, they start acting weird, and it usually hits me all within about a month because they're all kenneled beside one another. They're kind of synchronized with one another.
Yeah, they just bring them all in, won't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, females can aggravate me more than anything. I prefer a male, personally. You know, a lot of people say they're too stubborn and stuff, but I can usually take that stubbornness right out of them.
I just get along with females better. I don't know. I'm hard-headed too, so I don't know. The 2 males that I have, I love them dearly, and they're fine hounds. And I'm wondering if I'm going to replace them when they get old and die, because I've got daughters out of both of them, and I've had the opportunity to keep male dogs, and for some reason, I never ever do. I just prefer the females. And somebody tells me, well, you know, they come in heat every year at the worst possible time. And I'm like, yeah, but that male dog, he's in heat every day. So. And it's cost me the last 2 years at the Tournament of Champions. I'm fortunate enough to live about 15 miles from where they hold the region hunt in the southeast. And Nellie did it to me last year, and Maggie did it to me this year. And they're half sisters.
Well, now you know when they're going to come in on you.
Yep. So probably I just need to hunt a different one.
I told Johnny, I said, mark it on your calendar so you don't try to get another entry that close to time. But yeah, I told Johnny, I said, if you need a handler for 4 months while I'm off work, I said, you got one. I said, because as far as the walker dog, and I've had just about most breeds, you know. I haven't had no luck personally with a walker dog, but I know they're out there. I've hunted with some good ones. She's definitely she's definitely a coon dog. I was treeing coon with her, 6 inches of snow on the ground, and most people weren't even trying to even hunt. I was out there treeing coon with her.
I'd be the one sitting on the couch.
Yeah. I enjoy hunting that kind of stuff. Especially a 2-year-old, it's the last hard winter. You need to put one on one. I kind of hope it's rough. I want to test them. You
bet. So before we wind up, I need to circle back a little bit, and we'll talk about your English dog some more. I never did ask you, what do you call your kennel, and how did you come up with it?
Well, I call my kennel name Calvary Hill English now. Mm-hmm. And, before that, I went by Full Throttle. Mm-hmm. Before 7 years ago, I gave my heart to the Lord, and I give all the praise and glory to Him for all things. I just thought Calvary Hill, Christ gave His life for me on Calvary Hill. That'd be a good name for a line, It fits me. Might not fit others, but it fits me.
Well, I thought that was, I kind of knew the answer, and I just wanted the listeners to hear that. I thought it would be significant, and it's pretty impactful that, that decision that we all get to make or don't make, and in your case, it kind of defines who you are, and you wanted to show your reverence in the way you name your dog, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely life changing. It changed my, before it was Full Throttle, and that's pretty well the lifestyle I lived was Full Throttle. Now it's, I just enjoy just doing my own thing and handle dogs for people if they want. I'm fair and easy to get along with. It's just a passion. I think when people are truly passionate about something, they'll be patient. That's what a lot of people need to put a little more patience into a lot of young dogs nowadays. And that's what I'm saying about Rambo. A lot of guys would have lost patience with him, but he showed me that patience, it paid off. I can overlook some things. If I see some traits in a dog that I really like, I might overlook a couple things just to give that dog just that much longer of a shot. Mm-hmm. And first thing I got a young one off of you out here. First thing I asked you, do they naturally hunt by themselves? And that's what I look for as far as breeding. I want that natural. I want to go geared to them. Mm-hmm. I don't care if they're running a mouse. Don't rub my ankles.
Yeah.
Heart goes a long way for anything. If a dog's going to give you its heart and pour its heart into something, I think, we ought to even, you got to put the good with the bad, because I'm just here to tell anybody that raises pups and most guys, I was going to tell you to name this, don't forget the little man, because most of these big name dogs that are doing all this winning is from a guy like me that can't afford to, they don't get recognized, like the guy that spends the hours, the money, the time, the patience that it takes to truly make these dogs. That goes a long ways.
I think that's a fitting end or icing on the cake, or however you want to put that, Paul. We've been going about a little over an hour now, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know you had a hard day today. It was long. You told me yesterday that they were going to keep you over and you had to do some overtime. And I know it's Friday night, and I appreciate you sitting down with me and doing this. I think the listeners are going to really enjoy it. The backbone of our sport is the guy, in a lot of cases, the girls, who just want to go out and have fun with their dog. And, most of us are never going to sell one for crazy money.
No.
I'd never set out to do that. I go because I love it. And it sounds to me that's the same reason you do it.
Absolutely. I work for a living. I ain't trying to sell dogs for a living.
Exactly. I've got a career. I don't need another one. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, Paul, I sure appreciate it, and I think we've shined this tree pretty good. But you got anything else you want to add?
Now that should wrap it up.
I really hope y'all enjoyed that interview as much as I did. If you like what you heard here, go on over to Facebook, give us a like at Coon Hunting U. Also, go to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review. It really helps us out. And remember, if you need a new hunting light, do not overlook Superior. They make an awesome light, best customer service in the business. Man, their walking light and double red is the brightest I've ever seen. Use coupon code CHU podcast at checkout at nighthunters.com. You can find the link in the description box below this. Coon Hunting University is a product of Audio Hound Productions. Until next time, y'all have a wonderful day.